Hi everyone, it's John from What Up, and welcome back to another video. We're going to tackle the biggest changes, in my opinion, from book to screen for the first season of Sony and Amazon's Wheel of Time show. Now, if you don't know what I do here, or you're new to the channel, I generally cover Wheel of Time show news, so anything and everything to do with Sony and Amazon's production, that's what we talk about here, but I also pepper it with a ton of just regular Wheel of Time content too. So if you like Wheel of Time stuff, you're in the right place. Make sure you subscribe to the channel and click the notification bell so you don't miss out on all of the good stuff that I'm putting out. Now, we're going to talk about changes today, so this is going to require a spoiler warning. So spoiler warning. We're talking about changes from book to screen for The Eye of the World and Some of the Great Hunt all the way to the first season of Sony and Amazon's show. So if you haven't watched all 8 episodes of the first season and read the first 2 books of Robert Jordan's Wheel of Time series, be forewarned, I'm going to ruin lots of stuff from both of those places. All right, all of that being said, let's get on to the biggest changes, in my opinion, from book to screen. All right, we're going to start off with changes to some of the characters. The first of the 10 changes I want to talk about today are the 3 boys. Their backstories, their personalities, and their characters themselves were changed slightly, and in some cases maybe greatly, from the source material, and that's what we're going to tackle first. All right, so let's talk about Perrin first. Perrin of the 3 boys is probably the biggest changes from book to screen. In the books, he's quiet, he's contemplative, he's careful, because he's scared to hurt his friends and his family with his size and his strength. He's basically described as a gentle giant and a deep thinker. Now, in the show, they went a little bit different route with them. So in the books, it's internal monologues and his actions that showcase this. In the show, he's married to Lila Abera in the first episode, and when the Trollocs attack a winter night, he goes into full-on Berserker Perrin mode, which we don't see till much later on in the season. Now, when he goes into Berserker Perrin mode, he accidentally kills his wife. Now, this is used as basically his internal struggle towards violence for the rest of the season. He doesn't like violence, he doesn't want to pick up the axe, he doesn't want to do any of those things until the very final episode. However, he's essentially completely traumatized. Now, if his character is even a little bit like his character in the books, it's going to take a very long time, if ever, for him to recover from this because he loves so deeply. So I'm hoping for some severe character development for Season 2 for Perrin. Now, the second of the 2 boys is Matt Coughlin. In the book series, he's mischievous. He likes playing pranks, and he loves to gamble, and he loves money. Now, he comes from a fairly well-to-do part of the 2 Rivers. His father is a successful horse trader, and on the village council. In the show, it's a little bit different. His mom's an alcoholic. His father is a womanizer. They're very poor. They live in poverty, and him and his 2 sisters are neglected, and he basically looks after them. So because of this, he really, really enjoys money because he doesn't have any. Now, he gambles a fair bit in the show, just like he does in the book series, which is completely the same, but one of the big changes is he becomes a thief. Now, he would never steal anything in the book series for any reason. In fact, he says it a bunch of times that he is never a thief and he would never do that. But in the show, he steals a gold bracelet from Dana to sell for good reasons. However, he still steals. All right, so Randall Thor in the book series is pretty, not very smart when it comes to women. He does have a relationship with Egwene in the first book, although, no one really believes that, and when they grow apart later on, it's not a big deal. In the show, there's much more of a payoff for this because it showcases them in a much more adult relationship. So the big change between Rand in the books versus Rand in the show is that he's kind of a ladies' man and he knows what he's doing. Now, to be fair, Rand is probably one of the people with the least amount of character development in the first season, so I'm not quite sure where they're going with this or how they're going to pay off him not being with Egwene later on, but here's to hoping that we see a little bit more of that further down the road. All right, so the second big change we're going to talk about today is the fact that the Dragon Reborn could be male or female, and they've also included Egwene and Nynaeve into the mix. So there was a whole lot of talk about this all over the place. Essentially, a lot of the non-book readers I talked to liked the idea. They liked the guessing game and trying to figure out who the dragon was, and although most of them pegged the dragon as Nynaeve or Egwene, the real dragon was Rand the whole time. Now, in the book series, it's not really that much of a mystery. We know who the dragon is almost immediately because all the facts point towards Rand being the dragon. The fact that he's the only one not born in the 2 Rivers, he's the only one that's different, he's Aiel. All of these things, plus the prophecies, basically make you realize Rand's the dragon early on. Now, in the show, they kept the guessing game up right until the last couple of episodes, and they even lumped in Egwene and Nynaeve there to add more people to guess who could possibly be the dragon. And Nynaeve's age didn't quite match up, but the fact that they made her an orphan meant the fact that, you could guess in her age just a little bit, and there's some leeway there, so maybe the prophecies were a little bit wrong and unreliable, and it could possibly be her. So again, second big change was this, and it seemed to be a hit with the non-book readers. All right, the third biggest change are the White Cloaks. They're both leveled up and leveled down for the show. So essentially in the book series, they're never really seen as a big threat to Aes Sedai or to really anyone else at all, and they're kind of a joke military force. We do get to see them a little bit during the first couple of books, so I wasn't shocked that they were in the show. However, the fact that they are actually formidable in the show made me pretty happy. They can take out Aes Sedai, they limit their ability to channel, and then burn them at the stake like they would witches during the witch trials. Really creepy and eerie to see, but I love the fact that they were leveled off enough to be a threat. Now, we're going to talk about the leveling down. In the book series, they may not have been that formidable a force. However, they were pretty smart. They knew what to do with Aes Sedai, and they never really truly believed the oaths that the Tarvan witches took. In the show, they basically say, we believe the oaths, we know they can't lie, and then when they meet Moiraine along the road, they don't ask her if she's an Aes Sedai, when realistically they're hinting about it the whole time. So basically, they're much more strong, but they're not quite as smart. All right, so the next big change we're going to talk about is the Logain storyline. All of this happens off page, and we're not really even sure that it does happen. And then they change a bunch of other main character storylines in the books to accommodate this Logain storyline. Now, when I first found out that Logain was going to be added and expanded, I was pretty excited because he is one of my favorite characters much later on in the book series, and we got to see a little bit of his backstory. We got to see here when he basically had the King of Geldon swear fealty to him. Then we see his armies trying to break him free after he was captured by the Aes Sedai and his gentling. All very neat and cool points while explaining just a little bit about the madness and the male half of the true source. Now, it was a little bit different than I expected in the show. However, I thought this was a positive change in the fact that we got to see a little bit more of Logain in the background than perhaps we did in the books. The next big change we're going to talk about is Perrin. Now, in the book series, he and Egwene meet Elias during their travels between Shadar Logoth and meeting the Tinkers. And Elias is a former warder who can speak with the wolves, and he basically lets Perrin know he can do that. It sets everything up and explains it in such a way that the readers have no questions as to basically what his abilities are there. Now, in the show, they're keeping us guessing. Basically, you kind of get the idea that the wolves don't care too much about him. At least they're not going to hurt him. They seem to want to help, but we don't know much other than that. Then later on in the White Cloak encampment, in the book series, Perrin kills a bunch of White Cloaks, which causes them to come after him much later in the book series, and there's a whole storyline based around that. In the show, however, he sort of just kind of turns into a werewolf-type creature where he's growling and not really himself, and scares the White Cloak questioner while Egwene stabs him. Then they escape. So a little bit of a change there. All right, so the next one I want to talk about is Tom Merrilin. Now, in the book series, his storyline is a little bit different. Essentially, he comes to Beltane to entertain, finds out the boys are mixed up with an Aes Sedai, and then travels with them when they leave the Two Rivers to keep an eye on them. You don't really know why at the time, but you figure he has a troubled past, and he's probably guilty for something. Now, after that, he goes through all the events up to Shadar Logoth. He ends up with the two boys. They take the spray when they're all separated to Whitebridge, and during their time in Whitebridge, a Fade attacks them. Tom presumably dies defending them from, the Fade attack, and we don't see him again until book 2. Now, in the show, it's a bit different. Due to scheduling conflicts, Alexander William couldn't join the cast until episode 3, so they had Rand and Matt meet him after they separated. So they meet him in a mining town, in an inn where he's singing a song, and then he finds out they're mixed up with Dark Friends and joins them on the road. The Fade attack happens at the Master Grinwald farm. So essentially, this is long after he's left them in the books, but they changed it up a bit so he's here for this particular Fade attack in the show. Now, he does presumably again die saving them from the Fade because we don't see him on screen after this, but we do know that he's back for filming for season 2. Now we're going to talk about Caemlyn. Didn't appear in the show. So, these scenes here where Rand meets Loial in the inn, they're essentially almost word for word the same as they are in the books. However, the big change here is that it happens in a completely different city. So in the book series, Rand and Matt go to Caemlyn on Tom's advice after he presumably dies to meet an innkeeper, Basil Gill. Now, this innkeeper then takes them in, helps them out, and they're there until Moiraine shows up and they all go to Faldera together. During this time, they meet Loial, and the events that happen during this library scene here take place almost word for word. However, what is cut is the fact that there is no Caemlyn, the fact that they didn't meet the royal family whatsoever, because Rand does meet Elaine, Galad, Gowan, Morgase, and Gareth Bryn. All of that, I presume, is going to happen in season 2. So while this particular scene with Loial is the same, and we do get the Ogier in the show, All of the rest of those elements around it are completely changed because it happens in Tarvalon and not in Caemlyn. The next big change happens in Tarvalon. So essentially, Tarvalon didn't feature in the first book whatsoever, and a lot of things were explained over a few books via exposition dumps. The bond between Warder and Aes Sedai, what happens when a Warder or an Aes Sedai dies, White Tower politics, the different Ajas, how the Amyrlin works, meeting the Amyrlin, all of those things, they do happen in the book series in some way, shape, or form, but it's all through exposition dumps or other storylines. In the show, they decided to take all that and condense it into a completely new storyline that was not in the book series, and this involved Corinne Nagashi, a Aes Sedai that was in New Spring, but she died off page. When she dies in this show, we get to see her warder here, Stefan. Now we get to see a little bit of what happens to a warder after the Aes Sedai dies. He has a mission, he carries it out, and then after that, he basically gives up on life. All of this is brand new, but it does explain some lore behind some things that we don't get to know until much later on in the book series. And then we get to see this. This is a warder type ritual that doesn't appear in the books in any way, shape, or form, but does give a little bit more depth to the basic warrior society of the warders, and they're not just stoic individuals, they have a little bit of emotion. I think they're going to do this more and more as the show goes on and take little bits and expand upon them to make them more realistic to today's world rather than just what's on the page. Now we're into the final two changes, and the first one is the Battle of Tarwins Gap. Essentially, the men from Faldara go to Tarwins Gap and they fail miserably. After that, you have Lady Amelisa, Lord Elgmar's sister, gathers up the only women in the town that can channel. They form a circle and they use that power to blast all the Trollocs. Now, none of this happens in the books. It's a little bit different. Basically, Rand does this. He shows up in the book series and he kills all of the Trollocs in Tarwin's Gap because the forces of the light, Lord Elgmar's men, are losing. Now, what they've done here is they've done a few different changes. Not only have they changed the battle, but they've also changed the mechanics of the power and how it works. In the book series, it is impossible to burn out and die while in the circle. There are natural buffers involved, and they've decided to change that. They showcase a couple of deaths here, and then they showcase the fact that Nynaeve can actually control the flows while in a circle and take power from Egwene, so she'll burn out instead of her. Again, none of this can happen in the books. It's completely against the hard magic system that Robert Jordan built up. But I think they're changing all of these things to a more soft magic system, and things are just kind of happen and be magic-y on screen rather than perhaps explaining things with definite rules. All right, now we're going to talk about the very end of the series and the end of the Eye of the World. Essentially, they are completely different with very little parallels. In the book series, the Eye of the World is a green, lush place that happens to be in the Blight, overseen by the Green Man. He is a Nym, a construct left over from the Age of Legends. He protects the Eye of the World, which is a giant pool of the male half of the true source that is completely taint-free. Now, when the whole party gets there, a couple of Forsaken show up. There's a battle there where the Forsaken essentially dominate everyone, and then the Green Man happens to kill one of them. Rand then uses all of that power to kill the other. Pretty cool battle, although very confusing. After the Eye of the World is drained, the Horn of Valir is found underneath, along with a dragon banner and a shattered seal. In the show, things are completely different. It's basically sort of a fortress-type place in the Blight that they know where it's at, and they think it's the Dark One's prison. The seal is a giant image on the floor, and the Dark One who's there is a Shamael, much like in the books, and then he essentially pulls Rand into a dream trap. Now, in this dream trap, he gives him everything he could possibly ever want, and then Rand has to realize that he can't have this because it's not real, because he's taking choice from other people. This is not what anyone else wants, it's what he wants. He then uses a Sa'ir Grail to defeat Shamael, effectively freeing him, which is a little bit cooler than in the books, although very confusing because not any of it was explained for this final ending. So, quite a bit different. Probably just as confusing as the book, though. Whew! So, like I said earlier, these are not all of the changes for the show. And in fact, a lot of the show is completely unrecognizable from the Eye of the World book. And in some cases, that's a very good thing. In other cases, it's not so good. There are, however, some fans that truly love every element and aspect of the show, regardless of what it is, and there's some fans who hate everything about it too. Myself and most of the other fans are somewhere in the middle. Some things worked really well, I thought. Other things could be improved upon greatly, and I'm kind of hoping for a lot of the things they set up in the first season to be paid off in season 2, and maybe, just maybe, they offer some more explanations for how the power works and the objects of power and how they work as well. Because let's face it, this whole first season centered around the fact that magic was magic. It just kind of magically magicked things. It's a lot of magic words, but that's how the season played out. in the book series. As the books progress, the magic system becomes more hard and more defined. There are rules. We don't really get those rules during the Eye of the World very much, so I'm kind of wondering if maybe, just maybe, they're going with that unreliable narrator bit, and the rules are still there, but we won't learn them until season 2 or 3 or further on. That's what I'm hoping for anyway. Now, let me know in the comments down below what you folks thought. These obviously are not all of the changes, and they may not even be the most important ones to everyone, but they're the ones that I wanted to showcase today. So let me know what changes you thought worked really well in the comments down below, and what changes you didn't like, as well as what you hope happens for Season 2 as far as these changes setting certain things up. All right. Thank you so very much for sticking with me here to the very end. Here's to many more.